Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Bigfoot Report. Want to tell everyone, wish everyone out there a very happy Memorial Day to everyone out there that has served. All of our military men and women, past and present. I have so much respect for you guys. I thank you. We all thank you for your sacrifices and everything that you do for this country to keep us all safe and free. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Guys, got a couple more encounters that we want to share with you on this Memorial Day. I will be starting it off telling you about the pre hunt camping trip that went wrong. Tiffany will be following that up and closing the show out while she tells you about the crying baby. Both of these encounters happened on the Appalachian Trail. All right, guys, that's enough of all of that. I know you're ready. We are ready. Sit back, relax. Let's get started. I don't really know how to start this off, so I'm just going to give you the best account that I can. It's hard to put it into words, but it's even harder to believe that I experienced it firsthand, and I can only hope to convey it to you the way it happened to me. To start, my folks owned some land in the Appalachians. That's where I grew up. I was always in the woods hunting with my dad. I don't think there's ever been a hunting season we missed. From small game to big game, we were there for it. Now, I'm fully aware of the myth and the legend that go along with living in that area. If something whistles at you in the dark, no, it didn't. Close your curtains before nightfall. If you hear your name being called, don't answer. All that stuff. But I don't recall ever hearing anything out of the ordinary or being fearful in the woods at all. This hunting season was set up like most all of them were. Dad and I got the blinds and everything we needed together and were to set out the next day. I thought I'd just camp out on my folks' property and meet up with my dad the next morning before daylight. I say about an hour before dusk, I went a few miles into the woods to set up camp. I made my fire, set out my chair, set up my tent. Night fell, and I had my fire going pretty good to knock the chill off and keep stuff away from it so I could sleep in a couple hours. As I was sitting around the fire before bed, I could hear the woods come to life. I heard all scampering of smaller animals, insects of that sort. But then I heard something I hadn't ever heard all the while I've lived there as a kid. A whistle. Then it sounded like two rocks being smacked together. I sat as still as possible, listening for that sharp clack again. The forest then fell silent. The small game moving across the floor of the woods went still. Even the insects stopped making noise. I know when a predator is around, that'll happen, but as I said, I hadn't ever experienced anything like that. I started thinking back to all the stuff I'd heard about these mountains. I'm familiar with the stories of Bigfoot, and I've listened to encounters from others. I remember many say they hear whistles, wood knocks, and they have things thrown at them. I'm an open-minded skeptic. I just hadn't experienced that or ever seen a Bigfoot. My mom and dad never indicated to me that they had either. It was definitely something I had planned to ask my dad about the next morning. I sat there for probably another 30 minutes listening to everything around me. I went in my tent shortly after, not hearing anything else out of the ordinary. I climbed in and realized when I went to zip it closed that the zipper was broken. I cursed under my breath, but honestly, I wasn't too perturbed about it. These woods were my home, and I still had my fire going low. I didn't have anything to offer whatever may attempt to come in around except an empty soda can sitting on top of a cooler I had set there to the side. I fell asleep looking out my tent door at the stars and listening to the insects that had started again. I guess an hour or so had passed when I heard something knock the empty can off my cooler. It hit the ground and startled me. I'm a light sleeper, always have been. I didn't really think anything of it, though. It could have been the wind that blew it off. Suddenly, though, just as I'm about to go back to sleep, I hear footsteps. I was laying there thinking it may be later than what I thought, and my dad had come up. I scrambled to look at my watch, but it was only a little past 2 in the morning. No way that was him, but I didn't know why there would be footsteps. Something was clearly walking around my tent a little further back. It was definitely bipedal. Deer don't sound like that when they walk, and their footsteps were nowhere near as heavy. As slowly and quietly as I could, I reached over and grabbed my 9mm. My brain was trying to process the sound of the footsteps and what else they would belong to. That's when the overwhelming feeling of fear came over me. That was a whole new feeling for me because, as I mentioned earlier, I hadn't felt fear in the woods. But there it was, and I'm not afraid to admit, at 45 years old, I was scared shitless. My heart rate went up, and I had started shaking. Adrenaline, it's a pain. The footsteps got closer and closer, and I could hear the leaves that had fallen crunching with every step. I steadied myself as much as I could, and I was ready to leave my tent to see what it could be. It probably wasn't a good idea, but at the time, even though the steps were heavier than I've heard any person make in the woods, I wanted to make sure, because if this was a person, more times than not, they're more dangerous than animals. When I sat up, I noticed the glow from the dimly lit fire was casting shadows around. That's when I heard the footsteps come right up to the side of my tent. I froze. The only sound I could hear then was the pounding of my heart in my ears. I quietly scooted back until I was up against the back of my tent. I was really angry now that the zipper had broke and I was unable to close the door. I was free game right then. Just as the deer we hunt, I was now the prey to whatever this is. The shadow of whatever this was that was now casting on the side of my tent was huge. That's when I realized it was something that had legs like a human, but way larger in comparison. If I wanted to, I could have reached out and grabbed it. That's how close it was. I just sat there shaking, staring at the large shadow. That's when I came to reality and knew this had to be a Bigfoot. They really are here. My biggest fear then was the damn open door. I scoffed quietly at my 9mm. That thing would not make a dent in this if the shadow of the legs I'm seeing is that large. I really thought I was a goner as it took 2 more steps to the front of my tent. I thought to myself then, this is how I'm going to go. I made peace with God and waited for it to rip the tent off me and either kill me or carry me off. I heard it open my cooler, and I had thoughts of just running as fast as I could to my parents while it was distracted. Fear will take you pretty far when you think you're running for your life. And with all the adrenaline I had, I could have probably made it there in no time. But I felt like I was part of the ground. I could not move. It gruffed disgustedly as it moved items around almost like it was perturbed I didn't have anything it liked. One more step and it was standing at the entry of my tent. The legs, I can tell you, were massive and muscular. It was covered in hair, not fur. It turned and grabbed the top of my tent and shook it. I was screaming at this point, and I guess it caught this, what I could only assume was a Bigfoot, off guard. The shaking stopped when it heard me. That's when it bent over and looked inside my tent. I don't really know how to describe to you how I felt at this point. I knew I was going to be another missing person case. I was sure of it. This thing's head was probably 2 of mine. The face was that of an ape, but at the same time had qualities about it that appeared human-like. Thick brow ridge, flat nose, thin lips, but a very broad mouth. I had my gun in my hand, but I tell you, I couldn't shoot it. I just couldn't. A low rumble came from its chest then, and I instantly felt dizzy. I had lost my bearings and felt like I was going to be sick. Then I guess I blacked out. I don't remember anything after that. I jerked when I heard my dad yelling at me. It was daybreak, and my dad was pissed. I quickly crawled out of the tent and was frantically looking around in fear that this huge beast was out there and it was going to get my dad. But it was gone. No tracks, no nothing. My cooler was still open, and I could see where everything in there had been moved, so I know this wasn't some awful dream. I tried to explain it to my dad, but he just said we'd talk about it later. I declined hunting for the day, obviously. To be honest, it took me a good long while before I went back. Dad had hurt his back the next year, so we couldn't go then either. I was fine with that. I know people have their own opinions about these things, and if you use this, I'm sure I'll catch some slack, and that's okay. I know what I experienced, regardless of what they say. I'm just glad to have seen another day. I couldn't begin to tell you why this Bigfoot didn't kill me. I just know I'm glad it didn't. Thanks for listening and for all that you do. John M.
This isn't going to be the longest encounter ever shared. But like you guys always say, we need to hear them all so we can learn as much as possible. It is the best option we have right now, in my opinion, as well. Mine happened just a couple years ago in June of 2023. So we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the event that completely changed my life and my mindset. I was not a believer before, to be completely honest. I didn't give a crap one way or the other. Of course, I'd heard of them. How could you not? You can't watch the TV without coming across at least one show on the subject, or drive down the road and not see 20 Bigfoot stickers on all kinds of different cars. I didn't knock any of it. Just wasn't my cup of tea. I lived in Northeast Pennsylvania for about 10 years now. I moved here from the North Georgia mountains where I was born and raised. I have always enjoyed nature, and I really love to hike. I was really excited when I had to move due to a work transfer that I would still have access to the Appalachian Trail, albeit a completely different side of it. It's always been my dream to complete the through hike, and God willing, I will. Even after what I'd experienced a couple years ago on the trail, although very scared at the time, I haven't really been since. It's hard to explain. I could be very wrong, but I feel like as long as you respect them, they will respect you. I don't know, just my thinking. Like I said, it was a June morning when I set out for a hike. It was just around 9 a.m., but already way too hot. Being from the South, though, the heat is something I'm quite familiar with. I wasn't planning anything huge for the day, just about 5 miles out, and then head back. I wasn't planning on camping or anything like that. This was an area that I wasn't super familiar with, so I knew better than to do what I did. Curiosity just got the better of me, and I am so very lucky things didn't go very bad for me that day. It could have been so much worse. I'd say I was about 3 to 3.5 miles in when the uncomfortableness set in. I had experienced this feeling once before years back in North Georgia. That time it turned out to be that there was a mama black bear and a cub on the trail just ahead of me. I got a little too close for Mama's comfort and she charged me. That was the one and only time I'd ever had to deploy my bear spray, and thank the good Lord it worked just as it should. Both Mama and Cub hightailed it out of there, and I did the same, in the opposite direction, of course. This was the same feeling I had right before I saw those bears that day back in Georgia. Needless to say, I was on high alert. It wasn't long after that when I started to smell something awful. I mean, it was bad. As I said earlier, I wasn't into the whole Bigfoot thing back then, so I had no idea that a foul smell could be a possible warning sign of a Bigfoot nearby. I'm hiking along, uncomfortable as hell, when out of nowhere I hear it. A baby crying. A dang baby crying. As far as I know, there are no camping areas around this part of the trail, but like I said, I wasn't all that familiar with this area. I stop and listen, and it happens again. It was an actual baby crying. No other voices could be heard. I remember thinking, there's no way there is a baby this far out, all alone. Now, it's hiking 101 that you do not venture too far off trail. I mean, of course, when nature calls, you step off the trail to do your business in private, but you never let the trail get completely out of sight. That's how people get lost. I knew this, but there was a very small child out there that seemed to need help. The father in me wouldn't allow me to not do whatever I could to help. So off the trail I went. Every 15 feet or so, I would break a small limb attached to a tree and leave it hanging down at a 90-degree angle. This was to mark my path, and I truly believe it's what kept me from possibly becoming another missing 411 case. I remembered reading the infamous tale of Hansel and Gretel as a small child and how they left breadcrumbs behind. These broken limbs would hopefully guide me back to the trail, and I'd face a far better fate than they did. As I walked along, straining to hear for any sounds, that's when it hit me that the woods had become so damn quiet. I could hear every breath I took, and it seemed to echo in the silence. The crying seemed to stay just far enough ahead of me to where I had to keep following it. And wrong or right, that's just what I did, still breaking limbs along the way. I found myself in a deep trove of trees, and that's when I saw what changed my view on not only Bigfoot, but many other things in my life as well. I now questioned everything I had ever learned or been taught. The crying had ceased at this point, and what was standing in front of me made my head spin. Just among the trees, just barely visible, I saw her. She was at least 7 feet tall, long, groomed brown hair all over her. Yes, I said groomed, almost like she had just been brushed. Hair, guys, not fur. Hair, hanging about 4 inches off of the barely visible part of her arm. In her arms, she held a child. Not a human child, mind you, but what I can now only say to be a baby Bigfoot. Then the smell returned. That awful, pungent smell of rotted meat, trash left in the hot sun, and body odor. It smacked me in the face just as hard as reality just had. I was frozen. I didn't know what to do. People always ask why you didn't take videos or pictures when you come across them. I'm guilty for asking the same questions. But I know now why. My only thought was leaving the same way I had come, and quickly. I held my hands up in front of me in a non-defensive manner and told her I meant no harm. I backed away as slowly as I could, backwards. I misjudged my footing and a large branch cracked loudly underfoot. I gasped and turned around to look behind me. When I looked back their way, they were gone, like they were never there to begin with. I walked backwards a little ways more before I took off running, passing each branch that I had broken along the way. When I made it back to the trail, I felt safe enough to stop, wipe the sweat from my face, and finally grab some water. I sat down hard in the middle of the trail, trying to wrap my mind around what had just happened and what I had just seen and experienced. Was it a hallucination from the heat? No, no way. It was a Bigfoot and her child. I don't even know how else to explain what I experienced that day. It did, however, solidify my thoughts of the smell being a protection mechanism that they use. Well, that's it, guys. My encounter with what I didn't believe in, with what I thought was only a fad. It's real. They are real. No matter what anyone says, I know my truth, and I know what I experienced that day. Thank you again for all you guys do and for offering an outlet for folks like me.